To anyone that's watching, I'm especially excited to be here with Daniel to share this story. I shouldn't have favorite clients, but I do, and you can find me for it. And the reason being is for you, Daniel, in particular, you did three things really, really well in the program. You were consistent as fuck. Every single week you were chipping in, and I could see you making gradual progress, balancing all the things that you had going on and just making solid progress with the business. You were always sharing your wins in the community, which was really special. I think for us to be able to see the progress and for you as well to be able to look back and see the journey. And the last thing, I'm very close with most of the coaches in the program, and I've only heard the best of the best of the best things being said about you because of one thing that you were doing, where they would give you feedback and you would implement it and you would do it quickly and you come back to the next session with a different question entirely or something to build upon that. So for people watching, like, yes, I want you to be inspired by like the huge numbers that Daniel's done, but I think take more lessons from the actual process and how he got there, because that's how you will be able to do the same. But look, man, I'm going to give you the microphone. Can you just introduce yourself, your business, what you do, and who you do it for, essentially?
Sure, man. I appreciate what you just shared. So yeah, so I'm Daniel basically, and I have a company basically where we work with agencies and consultancies doing anywhere between 1 to 20 million in annual revenues. That continues to get bigger and bigger as we onboard now bigger and bigger companies actually. But that's kind of like our clients, and most of the time they struggle with business development and figuring out a way to really consistently acquire clients in their very complex corporate structures.
Hmm.
They usually have large deal sizes and very complex decision-making structure and stuff. So I've basically built a client acquisition system over the past 10 years that is working extremely well for that very, very specific type of niche.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so that's kind of like what I do, and yeah, I've built a program basically that helps my clients work through that and
Hmm.
eliminate client acquisition as an issue.
And just to clarify for everyone, Daniel wasn't working with us for 10 years here in the company. We hadn't even kind of started. If you could speak to like what you were doing beforehand
Yeah,
and then to that kind of transition period
sure.
going into EasyGrow at that point.
Yeah. So I mean, I've been in business development and sales and in service business for 20 years now. So I'm not new to the game. But for the past 10 years, I've very heavily thought about more systematic client acquisition. First of all, because of the problem that I had when I left corporate. I had a consulting business that I started and had no clue how to really win clients and build a business and stuff like that. So I had to figure out how to actually do that. So I did what everybody else did and went through my network and do that stuff. But I was always good at outreach. I was always good at getting people to the table. I was really good at getting really busy people to talk to me. I was always really good at that. So I figured, okay, look, let me just use that, I guess. So I did that. And eventually it was, just it worked really well, but it was too much work. So I started systemizing it and I started thinking about the entire process of how to do that. And eventually, basically, I actually built that client acquisition system that I now use with my clients to build my own consulting firm. Um, so I did that, and then I actually joined a relatively big digital agency in Zurich, where from the ground up, I implemented the system. I built it up to a place where um, we acquired like 17 new clients in 18 months. We did more than 2 million in brand new revenues in that time. And this strategy or system that I've built became like 80% of the entire new business stream. And that worked really well. And then basically I exited there in May this year. And now basically I'm using this methodology to help the agencies and consultancies, in mostly in the Swiss market, but it tends to expand more and more to do the same thing, because everybody struggles with the exact same thing. Business used to work a certain way and it doesn't anymore. Things have changed. Networks exhausted, referrals don't come in as much as they used to. And
Mhm.
it's just a very different world in business where stuff is very fragile and unstable, and you need to sort of like figure out a way to minimize your risk as you're growing. So that's
Hmm.
kind of like what I do on a daily basis.
Hmm. Speak to me about the process between when was it that you started with us? Was it September or November of last year? September.
I think I can't remember, but I initially basically um, what I did is I signed up because I wanted to use the strategies at my agency back then,
Hmm.
but that you've
In the
built
company that
because
you were working in, right?
yes, so I started implementing them, and they started to work really well as well.
Hmm.
So I started to use them as well, the strategies, and just used what you basically have in the program in EasyGrow to fine tune what I had already built back then.
Hmm.
So that combination worked really well, and that was basically why I joined in the beginning.
Hmm. And when was the moment that you kind of pivoted and you're like, look, I can do something on my own right here?
That was, I think, in November, December last year, I made the decision to leave.
Hmm.
Um, But it took me a long time to really understand what's going to be next.
Hmm.
Um, I had no clue, and everything started to fall more and more in place. I was talking to a lot of agency consultancy owners that I know. They all said they have the same problem. And basically in the process, some were like, we need you, right? Um, and I was thinking, okay, cool. Maybe I could just rebuild what I've built before faster and bigger over the next 2 to 3 years
Hmm.
as an employee, but eventually I decided not to, and I decided to basically um, systemize the structure and everything that I've built into something that can be replicated into any consulting firm or agency, and
Hmm.
use that um, as my product in a sense,
Hmm.
um, to grow the business and not to go back into employment.
And where were you at in terms of formulating your business? November, December, when you decided that you
No,
got
I had no clue.
nothing.
No, I had zero clue what the hell I'm gonna
Okay.
do after. No, that was really late. That was probably like April or maybe May, where I
Okay.
really, really, really thought about that this could be something.
Hmm. Okay, so you decided to leave like November, December. We don't need to dive into the reasons because obviously that relates to your previous work, but in the time from December to April, May, you were still just formulating like, am I going into companies, putting the systems, am I building a
Yeah,
program? And that's where all those kind of ideas were going
yeah,
around.
exactly. I was heavily going through like a phase where I'm just trying to figure everything out and
Hmm.
rethinking everything and looking at the options and paths and evaluating that and
Hmm.
yes.
Now, I've got to know you quite well over the past year. You're calculated, you're very logical in your decision-making process and typically how you go about life. And I found a lot of inspiration in that for the kind of structures that you put in place. What was that like leaving the career that you had so much experience in, where a lot of people might feel a sense of like the golden handcuffs where they get stuck in that kind of opportunity? Essentially what I'm asking is like, what would you tell somebody in your position that has the
Mm,
skill set, wants to go off and do something on their own, but they're also looking at their consistent monthly income
yeah,
and thinking,
yeah,
this isn't the best, but
yeah.
it's not the worst. What would you kind of advise them at this point?
So one is you have to do it for the right reasons. So I'm speaking just to myself, right? So advising myself in that situation is first of all, you have to do it for the right reasons. And second, you have to create a construct that can't fail. What I mean by that, so what I did, I'm sharing a lot behind the scenes stuff. I haven't really shared that with um, many other people, but the first one is for the right reasons. Um, so money is not what motivates me, and I think the reason is because I made quite young at a young age quite a lot of money already, And I realized at some point it's like it's nice, but it doesn't really like make me that much happier. I love money, but it's more because it's a game. I like the gamification of money, and what you can do with it and what can move with it, but not for my personal gains necessarily. It's just like I don't need that much, you know. I'm okay. I'm more than okay. So that's one thing. So for me, the two reasons are number one, I remember when I was in the process of leaving, my wife actually talked to me and said, you know, you're 40 now, you know, and I think it's very important for the next thing you do to be something that is long term, like really long term, right? And she meant employment, you know, something where you can be around for a long time and you can have a career and you can, you know, become a senior executive at a bigger company or whatever.
And little
And
did she know what she set free from that kind of goal.
yeah, and I was like, the one thing that I could think of is is my own business. There's nothing else that is more long term than that because I don't own a job, you know, somebody owns me. And sure, there's interesting constructs you can have these days with partnerships and all kinds of stuff. But one of the reasons why I was so frustrated as well for the past couple of years at the agency was because of the lack of control. For so many at so many points, I felt like I know what to do. I understand where we need to go, and I'm going to go all in. But I couldn't decide. It was not my business. And there's only so much you can do until
Mhm,
at some point you say, look, it is what it is. It's not my
mhm.
company.
Because when
So I wanted to have more control because I wanted to be more in the driving, in the steering, on the steering wheel, but also because of what my wife said. And the last thing is because I have two kids and I want to be a role model for them. And the best way for me, so we talk a lot about money and things like that in the family because I've never had that in my family when I grew up, right? So I want to give that to my kids. And I see my kids are already trying out stuff. They founded their first business, with eight. You know what I mean? Like they're trying experimenting stuff. And I just literally the one thing that I want to give them on the path when it comes to business is just like the understanding that the only limit there is physics and imagination. And that's it. There is no such thing as like this person has so much money or is so successful and I could never do that. There is no such thing because the other person is just a person, it's just a human being. And a business is just a business. And one is bigger. And one of the main reasons big businesses are big as well is also because a lot of time has elapsed, and all these kinds of things that are dynamics that you can't change time, you can't change physics, but everything else is very, very, very bendable. So for me, it's very important for my kids to understand that whatever they, whatever they, not whatever they want, but I think you know what I mean. Like whatever they want, whatever their heart truly desires, they can do it and there are no constraints. There is not a constraint of like I want to be an artist, but artists are starving in on a business sense. No, there is no such thing. There's no such thing as like I want to open a restaurant, but a restaurant has really shitty margins. No, there is no such thing. There are restaurants that are infinitely profitable. There are artists that make infinite money. There's nothing like that. There's nothing, it's just an imagination. It's just a mind. It's just how you think about things. So I
Mm,
want them to actually be able to see like um everything is possible. That's also when it comes to business, I love creating constraints for myself.
mhm.
Um one of my mentors once said like,
Wait, doesn't that sound like juxtaposition from what you just kind of said? So
what do you mean?
so you mentioned don't constrain yourself before and have this
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
limitless
No, I
thinking,
mean in
but then
terms of
also
like
putting constraints.
challenge. For example, like one mentor once said to me, like, it's much more interesting than saying I'm moving to a new house. and I'm moving all my furniture to the new house, it's much more interesting to say like I'm moving to a new house and I need to get all the furniture through this tiny window that is there and there's no other entry. That
Mm-hmm.
is way more interesting than the first because of the constraint.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the same thing with my schedule. Many people I know they work 12, 14 hours a day. So there's a lot more time available. I constrain myself ways more, partly because I want to spend time with family, but also partly because I love that constraint. So that brings me to my last thing, which is like um, a construct that cannot fail. So when I decided, and yes, I'm very rational and I thought this through heavily. So when I decided to say I'm going to go all in with this business, I didn't do that as a wild dream or just like whatever happens, happens. I created very clear boundaries in the sense of like, number one, I will pay myself my full-time income, which is a very good income that I've earned from day one, which say, most people that I know who start a company go like, for the first year, you can't pay yourself much. For the first year, why? Like, you- because when you do that, you design the rest around it.
Mm-hmm.
So when I say I'm starting full-time income from day one, I design the rest around it.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing. And the other thing, I set very clear constraints in the sense of like, I have to have this much runway by then and this much by then. And if that is not the case, and this is like black and white numbers, I will close my company that day, like officially liquidated.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the agreement that I signed with myself.
And did that make you feel more secure, or did it add a sense of urgency, or
It
both?
created a sense of urgency, but also like a sense of security because I didn't feel like I would then drag on for years and years trying to make something work where I'm like, it's either just not meant to work or it's just like I don't want to do it or whatever. But I would just go like, if it financially doesn't really work and it's not viable in the way that I want it,
Mm-hmm.
I'll just move on. So I'll close it and I go back into something else. I could go
Mm-hmm.
back. And that's also like, I don't have an ego about employment or whatever. I could totally go back into employment. That's fine, because if I would do that in a year from today, the stuff that I would have learned in those 12 months will make me infinitely more successful in whatever construct that I go back to. And I don't care if I'm back employed, I don't care if I'm a partner, I don't care if I'm one company. That's not really what matters that much to me. It's more that I can really um, do what I love and live out the stuff that I feel like has the most impact. And sure, I also want like something that makes sense long term for myself, for my family, but I don't have an ego attached to that. Like
Mm-hmm.
when I left corporate the first time, like early, I had a huge ego attached to that. You're either a corporate slave or you're the independent lifestyle entrepreneur. It's both bullshit because it's just a mind constraint. You can be very happy and very successful and incredibly free as an employee and you can be miserable and everything else as an entrepreneur and you can be everything everywhere, so it has nothing to do with the construct but moving out and embracing all the beliefs that are out in the world and on YouTube. you
Mm-hmm.
know you embrace that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's a long answer, but like
It makes
these are
sense.
kind of like the things that I set up for
And
myself.
obviously, we're here to interview you, not me. But what you were mentioning about the constructs and then designing life around it, creating something more interesting, that's something that I learned in my previous career where I was studying architecture, and it became really, really, really clear where you're working on a site that has loads and loads of constraints. Maybe you're building on the top of a mountain, or you have very tight buildings next to it. That's always, always, always what created the most interesting designs, not the ones that just had a wide open canvas where they could do anything they wanted at that point right there. So
Mm.
it does make me think about that, where there's an element of open thinking but then creating very clear barriers so you know what your kind of playing arena is, if that makes sense. I think a
Yes.
lot of people struggle in business because they haven't gone through that transcendence to create, well, where the football pitch is. They're trying to play football across
Yeah.
the entire kind of planet without any kind of constraints on that
Mm.
side. Let
Yeah.
me take a step back right here, though. When you first booked in the call, what was that kind of stood out to you about us? Because essentially what I'm thinking, right, you have 20 years of experience in sales and development. What was it that stood out about us that made you think these guys that are all in their 20s that haven't been doing this for 20 years, they might be able to help? What
Yeah.
was that stood out?
I think two things that I haven't really seen that way. One is the level of success in terms of um like the financial success with the business. But the second is the construct of the business with the profitability and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Because where I come from the world of consulting and agencies, right? And there, if you're doing well, you maybe have 20 to 30% left over. And you do it usually quite in a chaotic way, where as long as it works, it works. But it only works if everything goes up. So what really enticed me is, I guess I was just drawn a lot more. I was drawn to a lot more of my personality, also like in terms of like Charlie and the way he is very systematic and data driven, and it resonated very much with me from that perspective, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
felt like, maybe this is my path to the next level. So I wanted to have that um structure and um way of doing business in my own um setup, basically.
Okay. And how long were you watching Charlie for before you kind of booked in the first call?
So the reason I actually even got aware of Charlie is because for like 2 years I paid for YouTube Premium to not have ads, and then it ran out. I was like, okay, this is getting way too expensive. I'm not going to renew. The next day I saw the ad of Charlie and I booked a meeting with you.
Brother,
And
you told me that on the call, and I can find the recording where I told you that
I
was
know,
fate. That was fate
I know,
that
I
that
know,
happened,
I
right?
remember that.
And that was sitting here a year down the
I
line.
know. But then I booked the call and then I watched one case study or two case studies. And then I watched Charlie's EasyGrow walkthrough on YouTube,
Yep.
the launch video or something like that.
Hmm.
And at that point, I was pretty warm, I would say, in terms of like I can see what it is. It's interesting, and I was kind of like excited for the meeting.
Hmm. Now, this is where I put my ego to the side for a second. I didn't close you in the first call. Can you remember what it was that, if there
I
was?
know, and you told me never to tell anybody, and now you're telling everybody.
That was a joke.
Yeah. What do you mean?
Do you remember if it was it like some hesitancy or was it just something like you needed to kind of get organized beforehand?
I don't know. I mean, maybe it's because I'm Swiss,
Okay. What does
I don't
that
know, man.
mean?
No, I mean, I think Swiss in general are not that like decisive. We're
Hmm.
much more risk averse. We want to think things through and just make sure everything is ticked off before we move into something. I think maybe that's part of it, a little bit cultural DNA.
Hmm.
Um, and other than that, I don't know. I think I was pretty convinced, and I think the one thing that I was a little bit hesitant about was like our business back then, you know, was very, very different from the clients that you had,
Hmm.
right? Um, so that was probably a concern as well.
Hmm. Because it was corporate of a larger scale in a different market,
Yes,
those kind of reasons. Okay.
yes.
And was there something that happened in between that first call and then you messaging me like, Vince, let's go? Did something click into place?
Mm, I think I just thought it through and like how this could work and the benefits. Um, and then I got so excited. I was like, why wait? Because I think like deep down I knew I wanted to do it. So I was just like, it makes no sense to wait because there's not much left. So let's just do it.
Hmm. Okay. Tell me about the business now, what it looks like, kind of revenue wise, which people always get excited about hearing, and Yeah, we'll start at that point and then how it's structured and what your kind
Sure.
of day-to-day looks like in the company. And
I
then,
mean, it's still super early days, right? I mean, it's only like what, 6, 7 months into it, really. Um, right? I mean, as of today, it's about 50K in revenues, monthly revenues. Um, nice 60% profit margin after everything paid.
Mhm,
Literally no risk in the sense of like, so the margins are wonderful, but also there is no risk. I have if I had to stop everything, I would pay 1 month of fixed costs, which is about $1,000. So that's that's very different from what I have experienced before, you know, where you have hundreds of thousands per month in fixed costs. Primarily, it's employees. So getting rid of that cost takes at least 3 to 4 months.
mhm,
And even then, you have legal implications and just all that kind of stuff, right? Um, so it's a nice place to be in.
mhm,
Um, and yeah, price points doing around 25 to 30K. Um, right now. That's
mhm,
most likely going to increase quite heavily over the next year because I never had a serious price objection so far.
mhm,
Um, and I'm also seeing that because I feel it's priced quite low, clients don't take as much as action as I want them to because maybe it doesn't feel as painful.
mhm,
I'm really worried about that in terms of like it's too cheap. Um, But yeah, I mean, it's a nice business, 21K upfront on average, payments, um, and LTV, I don't know, it's still new, right? Um, but there's tons of LTV upgrade opportunities right now that are already there because especially when we start working with larger consulting firms or larger IT service companies, there's opportunities for more regions, for more branches, more offices, more licenses with that, right?
mhm,
That's already starting to happen now, which is nice. And yeah, I mean, the setup is enormously simple. It's me and my program, my product. That does 95% of the heavy lifting when it comes to the back end. Um, it's very leveraged. And then I have a setter basically who manages my LinkedIn account. And I'm onboarding a sales rep right now. And and it's just scaling outreach. Just, 5xing that over the next 12 months.
mhm,
And with that, most likely also 5xing, the output because what I've built works very, very, very stable in terms of client
mhm.
acquisition for myself as well. So that's kind of like the business for now, yeah.
Probably more, right? If you increase your pricing, is if you
Sure.
quintuple the volume of outreach that you're doing, you price it up to be doing a hell of a lot more. And how would you compare your days from like when you were in employment versus what they look like now?
Before it was mostly meetings. It really depends on my role, but towards the end it was mostly politics and meetings and lobbying
Hmm.
um and managing and well, no, I always enjoyed it, don't get me wrong. Like I really liked the way it was set up. It's not very, very different because for me, I don't think I was a normal employee, in that time anyway. So I also think I'm the worst employee in the world because, when you tell me what to do, it makes no sense. I'm definitely not going to do it
Hmm.
because it's stupid. So, I'll do what I think is best. So, it's not much different actually. It's I think it's a little bit more, it's more structured and there's less external influences, which is normal, I guess, right? So I design it exactly the way I want, And I mean that also like where client meetings fall in, I design that. Um, and there's no real internal overhead or meetings or something like that.
And what was it that you mentioned? You had like three principles. Was it fun, simple, profitable? Was that
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
those three, right?
yeah. So it's this is when it comes to like business principle or principles for the business, it's the business has to be fun, simple, and highly profitable.
Mm-hmm.
And every decision I make when it comes to the business, I'm trying to filter through those three lenses.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I have the business model I have. That's why I do what I do. And, that's why it's still very difficult. I think the most difficult one is simplicity, but simplicity has the direct impact on profitability, but also on fun. I think maybe simplicity is at the bottom of the pyramid.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a really difficult one, because it is so easy to say outreach is working really well on LinkedIn. I saw this cool thing on ads, you know, um, let me try it out.
Mm-hmm.
Or I just saw a YouTube video about this really cool AI tool. Let me sign up and try it out. That's sexy. Boring is okay. Now LinkedIn outreach works really well. We're in KPI. We need to add another profile. And now we need to set up everything, customize all the little details and nuances to make this work. Really, really boring, but really, really profitable and really, really simple. So I
Mm-hmm.
really love like Hormozi's saying of like, do more of what works and just do that. There's nothing else. There's nothing else. And just that ignoring the shiny objects is probably the most difficult thing in today's world, but of YouTube and social. I don't really have a lot of social. I have like YouTube, but that's it. And but still, there's so much stuff. And I was a naturally curious guy. I always like to learn and explore and figure out new stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I've become very, very good at just sticking with my plan and just like doing the thing that I should be doing
Mm-hmm.
today and nothing else.
A lot of self-restraint, right? To say no and no and no and
I
no
guess
to
it go,
yourself when you have ultimate freedom and you can do whatever the hell you want.
I
And
guess it goes back to that, right? The constraint, because I really believe like the constraints are extremely important to get it right. Yes. Yeah, because I could just spend a day, a week now on figuring out some more AI tools and
mm-hmm.
automating the 7 things that I do every week, which takes me 2 hours, that I do manually. I could probably take a week or two and just automate all of that. But what else could I do in those 2 weeks? Um, and there will be a time down the line where this becomes the more valuable thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the thing, right? Looking at it through the lens of like, what is the number one priority right now? And I spend a lot of time and effort to figure this out on a regular basis and then just try to do that. That's also why my business, the way I think about my business is there's only 3 things in my business. And of course I have to, well, a lot of that from Charlie, right? But it's like there's appointments, there's sales and customer success. There is nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case, then what is number one priority right now? So customer success works really well by design because I've built this into the offer and the product and the structure that works extremely well. So that's not a priority because it's not a problem, right? So where is the biggest constraint? The biggest constraint at the moment is more appointments. So I'm just going to focus all my attention on that and just get that to a level where the biggest problem becomes now sales, meaning like everybody's calendar is fully booked and we have ways too many people to talk to,
Mm-hmm.
again, and then solving that and just like
When do you
going in
think
that
that
order.
breaks? Not when it breaks, but when do you think customer fulfillment's going to become a constraint with the current model? How much in revenue do you see yourself making before you need to put in systems to handle that level of scale?
It's hard to say. Probably not between, not before 250 to 500K a month.
Mm-hmm.
not before that.
So
Because
now, yep.
once we onboard like 10, 15, 20 clients per month, then there will be some constraints because there are still parts where I am involved, but I already have, plans of how to solve that. And also like other things will be in place and will be here that I don't even know exist yet, you know? So for example, like the sales rep I'm onboarding, I still say sales rep, but it's actually more he's a very senior person in the market, and down the line, there may be a model where instead of me having sales reps, I actually have partners, and then he may be the partner for a specific market where he uses the product to actually make sure that he has almost nothing to do with delivery and just brings in clients. And the appointment booking is set centrally for him and his organization eventually. He uses the product as a license under, his own business, but under our umbrella. Maybe, but I
Hmm.
don't know. And maybe that's gonna eliminate another part of like where I'm thinking I'm gonna have constraints now. So I'm not really thinking about that at the moment
Yep.
because it's not a problem. But
It's
yeah,
it's restraint and focus on what is
yeah,
working.
try as much of that because then you make enormous progress like every week.
Hmm. Fantastic. Is there anything else I want to ask you before we wrap up? What do you think the most difficult part was in going through, let's split that question up. What do you think the most difficult part was for yourself building this business since April, May kind of time? And then what do you think were some of the things that you wish were better in the program or that could have served you better on that side of
Mm,
things? Because we're good, but we're not perfect.
yeah. Mm, the most difficult thing. Um, Most difficult thing. I think the most difficult thing is always and was like believing that it's going to work before it actually works, you
Hmm.
know? Um, but I think what really helped was just being very rational about it and say, okay, so here's the pre-launch. That's how much, how many clients I want to have in the pre-launch and just go do it. And maybe the most important part about it is like not take that goal as like if I achieve it, I will be happy, and if I don't, I have failed. It's just like that'd be a nice benchmark, and that's what I work towards.
Hmm.
And if I achieve it, that's great. And if I don't achieve it, that's okay. That's okay too, because I have no clue if this takes 3 months or 7 years. I don't know. So time is something I'm not trying to manage too much. It's more like persistent effort, because if I have that amount of clients in 3 months or in 9 months, that's okay. It doesn't matter that much. So
Hmm.
maybe that was that. And then when it comes to the program, um, I mean, but that's one very specific thing for me. It's just like the times of the coachings are very late in
Hmm.
the day. I think that works for most people because that's sort of like when they're done with work and then they go, But for me, when I'm done with work, I go to family, right? So that's just something I can manage it, but having 1 or 2 hours earlier would be easier to manage for my schedule.
Okay.
Um, but that's that. And I mean, specifically when it comes to EasyGrow, mm, maybe a more customized roadmap. Um, because when you come in and you're all in and you love learning and you love watching 3-hour videos, you're good, you know? But it can also be overwhelming, not because it's a lot of content, but because of like, is this the right path? In a sense of like, this is my business, this is my market.
Hmm.
Where do I start? Strategy wise, but then also like Probably not with acquisition genesis and self-transcendence, because I fundamentally believe you go through it full at least once, probably several times. You have, and if you don't do that, you just do yourself a disservice because that time is probably the most valuable time in the program.
Hmm.
But then afterwards, when it comes to strategies, I haven't even thought about inbound, looked into inbound and all that stuff. And probably that's a good there's a good reason why it's designed into the program. But also like when it comes to outbound, right? There's now more systems and more things, right? So where do I start? This is my market. This is like it's like okay, DM sorcery for LinkedIn or Loom or SMS or cold calling. This is my market. These are based on our 4,000 students. This is what has worked best for this market. So you should probably start here. Just thinking out loud. For me, that wasn't an issue because I know LinkedIn works really well, and I know that I wanted to start there.
Yeah. It can be like a child in a sweet shop where there's so many different things that they
Yeah.
go down towards. And sometimes you do need the kind of parent to be like, look, you can choose one sweet, that's all you're going to have. Otherwise, you're going to do too much and you're not going to feel
Yeah,
so.
it's again going back to constraints. I think it would have been helpful to say, look, this is your place, and you're
Yeah.
not going to go anywhere else until you have mastered that.
Yeah.
Because I think jumping from like, I tried that for 2 weeks, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Let me try the other thing, right? Um, yeah, just a thought. Yeah.
That makes sense. I'm going to pass that back to the team. Obviously, we're constantly improving and Charlie is restless. We both have to go in three
Yeah.
minutes. So we'll wrap up the call now. We'll get another coffee. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for putting aside the time, man, because
Thank you, man.
I
Appreciate
know how
it.
much you have going on, how much your family is a priority. So for you to give back an hour of your time to do
All
this
good,
video,
man. Always happy to.
it means the
Always
world.
happy to.
And obviously I got you into the mastermind. We're still going to be catching up after that point right there. Like I mentioned to you before we started recording, I've learned a lot from you and I've taken a lot of inspiration with how you've approached the challenge. And it's something that's, yeah, I know you're doing it to inspire your kids and to be a role model, but that's already kind of started in other areas and maybe you didn't even kind of realize it before. So I appreciate that, man.
All good, man.
I'm gonna on the weekend, I'm gonna try and find the when you said you deleted YouTube, and I said that's a prophecy, that's divine intervention right there because it's really proved to be the case. But
Yeah.
wouldn't have happened with you just being steadfast. So I'll catch you around. Thank you very much, man.
Thank you, Vince. Appreciate it. Have a nice day.
Cheers. Bye bye.
Take care, man.